Hello everyone, welcome to the first batch of answers portion of the Q&A. And we're just gonna jump right into it because you guys have a lot of questions and a lot of them are very good and very insightful. To get things rolling for this first batch, I am just gonna do the most upvoted, most liked comments from down below in the comment section at the time of recording. So, let's get into it. Modal Cardinal 09 asks, what do you use to determine the stats of the Pokemon in your campaign as well as character sheets for the Pokemon? I have a super complicated, but it works for me and my brain and the game so far, method of determining stats. I have since in this hiatus simplified it and made it a lot easier for me. I don't have a good way to explain it, and I apologize immensely for that. But as for how we came up with like the stats of the TOTS starters, I basically just worked with the players and I said, what are like 2 things they would be good at and what's something they probably would struggle with? And that kind of just evolved along the way. So hopefully that kind of clears things up. But if you want like a brief overview of how I make the stats, pull up I use Cerebi, because it's a great resource for Pokemon information in general. Pull up the Pokemon you want to use, look at their base stats, kind of extrapolate it from there. It's a lot of very complicated, but also not that complicated math. But I change it every now and then, but it's pretty easy when you start looking at that and then pull up a like challenge rating guide from a monster manual or something like that. Modal also asks, have you ever had the idea for a mystery dungeon campaign, and would the Pokemon have class features from D&D? Example given is a chat hot bard. No, I have not, but you should totally do that if that's something that interests you. But as for adding classes to Pokemon in a D&D setting, we're not gonna do that in the Tater Tots campaign. I want to put a nice little ribbon on that. You will not see that in the game right now the way it is. And I'll get into this in a couple questions moving forward, but Devin and I have spent a lot of late nights compiling everything we've learned from running our 2 games into something we have colloquially referred to as second edition. You won't see a lot of this stuff from that in the TOTS when we come back. You will see some of it, so stay tuned. Moving on, Timothy the Titan. You want to know how does evolution work in the system? I mentioned milestones in Bentley's latest gym battle, and it got me wondering about the specific mechanics. Also want to let you guys know that you're incredible. This is my favorite D&D series on the internet. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you for the kind words. How does evolution work in our system? So I always just vaguely say milestones. And if you're not a longtime DM from like older settings that I'm not even a part of, that doesn't mean anything to you. So let me explain it a little bit better. Evolution is not something I hand out lightly because it is a huge immediate gain in power that happens once, maybe twice in the entire game. So I want them to feel meaningful. That's not to say that a Pokemon will just never evolve if they don't do something spectacular. They will eventually hit a point where you go, okay, it's earned, it's deserved. Now let's just find a nice moment for it. So, obviously, spoiler warning for all of these videos. So you have been warned, you will continue to be warned. The prime examples. Let's look at Haka, because that comes up a lot. How come Haka doesn't evolve? Why has D's whole team has not experienced an evolution? Haka is so close, and I say it in the gym session itself. I need one thing from you. I'm not going to tell you what that was, because that's still an active thread. He could still kind of pull that off. But every team member has a requirement or set of requirements that I am looking for. An easy way to think about it now, which is in no way related, if you've played Pokemon Legends, Arceus, however you want to say it. The Pokedex entries in there, they have things that they want you to do. There are milestones to hit in the research where your understanding grows. I have a similar system for evolution. There's a few questions that I'll probably cover in future videos because I'll probably forget that I've covered them here, but there's a bunch of questions on how do stone and location evolutions work. I don't interface with them. The question given there is like, what would happen if Star bumped into a water stone? Would she just evolve? No. If that's something that Devin wanted to do, yes, it would work. Because to perform a stone evolution is to consume that held item, which does stuff. So you are giving up the long-term benefit that you could give to anybody for a short-term boost to your powers once. So hopefully that covers a little bit more on evolution. We're going to get to that a lot. A lot of you have questions on evolution and how it works. But for now, Timothy, thank you for your kind words. Taito Alba, or Tito? I think it's Taito. Hopefully I get that right. Apologies. What guidelines did the players have when initially creating their characters and selecting their starter Pokemon? Basically, what did the character creation part of Session 0 look like for y'all? That's a great question. I let the players pick any Pokemon they wanted that they would be excited to have. Obviously, no legendaries, no mythics. And I encouraged them to pick something that would evolve at least once. So that they wouldn't start out either so far ahead or so far behind and never quite catch up or keep up. But they could pick anything they wanted, but they had to give me a nice backstory that made sense. So as long as they came up with a story that they wanted to tell, and that was important, come up with a story that you want to tell about your character, and pick a Pokemon that makes sense to that story. So Milo having Monty, being part of a very prominent male Pidgey system. Joel came up with that entire arc and the entire way that the campaign world functions. And he wanted a conflict with his family in having a Murkrow hatch from his egg that was supposed to be his Pidgey. So taking from that, if Milo's Murkrow egg had effectively been a Pidgey, he would never have gone adventuring. It wouldn't have been a thing he had to do. He would have just sent the Pidgey like normal, got the ribbons remotely. But instead, he's got this Murkrow, and now he has to go on this journey, visit these 3 far-flung places, so it makes sense that he would go explore, get stronger, and accomplish his goals in that way. Other example being Phoebe's overarching goal of understanding and uncovering and bringing to light Pokemon abuse in the world. Took a look at Nubster's nose being hacked off by a Team Rocket scheme. She wants to set out and get strong enough to shut that stuff down. So that's great. And I love that. As for like how we generated the player characters, because this comes up a lot as well, they got to pick any 4 proficiencies that they wanted. I didn't gate them on anything. I said, you pick any 4 as long as they make sense to you and things that you want to do. And then we just did standard array. So the 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, whatever the number I forgot. I think it's a 13 in there somewhere. They got to do that, lay out their characters as they wanted. I didn't tell them they had to play children. They all just sort of decided to do that on their own. So that kind of worked out. We talk about it a lot. I'm not going to put a link to it anywhere. You can track it down if you want to find it. The beta sessions of this game are out there just on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure some of you have already seen them. But it's from way, way back in the day, and that kind of explains a little bit of the process as well. But yeah, hopefully that kind of explains a little bit. But as for the TLDR of that is what guidelines did I put? Very, very few. They were on a very, very long leash, and I don't think I said no more than maybe twice. Scotty Swirl, you had a bunch of questions. Hi, so first off, love your videos. They've inspired me to do my own Pokemon DnD campaign. Love to hear that. Your first one, how do player character sheets work? See above. Specifically in terms of health, though, I will extrapolate a little bit on this. The Tots up until now have had a nebulous amount of hit points. I've never told them how many hit points they've had. Because I wanted their character sheets to be as simple as possible, because this is the first D&D campaign for every single player of the Tots. They had done a couple one-shots, I had taught them the mechanics of the game, but this is their first campaign, so I wanted things to be as simple as possible, so they don't even know how many hit points they have. Question number 2. What would happen if for some reason a player's HP dropped to 0? Would they have a possibility of dying like in normal D&D, or does something else happen? Stay tuned. Part 3. I remember in a Professor's Lab video you talked about how catching Pokemon works, and I was wondering if you expanded upon it a little more. Can they catch any Pokemon they see in the wild, or is it more story-based? Same deal here. A lot of you have similar questions on like how come they don't catch every boss Pokemon? Why don't they do this thing? Let me explain how the system works. Haha! Again, I'm not going to give you the exact numbers because the players might watch this and I don't like them knowing. But you can boil it down to 2 factors. There's a couple extras, but the 2 basics of this. The Tots can attempt to catch any Pokemon in the world. Any Pokemon. Things like the Haxorus were not catchable. That was not a Pokemon. That was a basically cyborg robot creation. So that was not catchable because it wasn't a Pokemon. I have a system that I refer to as will versus want, aka willpower and willingness. So take a look at the Pokemon games. If you try to catch something with high hit points and it's not poisoned or something, it's more likely to break out than something that's at like 1 hit point with false swipe and paralyzed, right? So the willpower being their hit points, the willingness being its general attitude towards you, and whether or not you've done something to subdue it or sedate it. So it's a fancy way of saying their hit points, their attitude towards you, and their general willpower as an individual in the world. So if you take something unwilling to be captured, something like bagels would have had an exceptionally high willpower because it's an established being in Nutri. It doesn't want to leave that space. So its willingness to travel with you is exceptionally low. Its willpower to remain independent is exceptionally high, but its attitude is very friendly. So take from that what you will. A Pokeball in our game has a 70% chance of working. A Pokemon with exceptionally high willpower will drop that exceptionally low. If their willingness is low, it will drop even further. So now you're starting to see this sliding scale get closer to 0. There are Pokemon that are impossible to catch at full hit points without interaction. That is a thing that you've seen many times. In those cases, that is where you're seeing the Pokeball either shatter, be destroyed, be deflected back immediately with no effort. But in a lot of these cases, you'll notice the players usually try to catch something immediately in a fight. It doesn't work, and they don't try again. That's not an agreement or anything, that's just something I've noticed from the players as we've gone through. Your last part of your question, Scotty, is who do you commission to draw all your characters in Pokemon? I would love to do the same for my campaign. We link the artists in every video's description box, including this one. So please feel free to check them out. We have Sam at Red Cat Studios, did a lot of our early Pokemon designs. Angelico or Savi does all of our trainers. And we have a line on a fella whose name is Mark, who does most of our more battle or dynamic shots. So like he did the Hillmouth poster, he did the Haxorus fight that was in that episode. He's done all of the sort of dynamic trainer poses. He's done a lot of those. So I like to use a good mixture of both when it makes sense to. Jumping on down, Matthew Turner wants to know, is there some form of unspoken bond? Oh, hey, this is the one I was talking about. Is there an unspoken bond behind the scenes agreement for the players to not try to catch the wild boss Pokemon such as Steelix, Majesticarp, or Kaz? I know their chances are best when the enemy is unconscious, but some of these Titans seem like they should have been worth a shot. No, not at all. The Tots generally just try at the beginning, and it doesn't work, and they don't try again. As for whether or not they could wear something down and catch it after a combat, look at Riot. Riot was a boss. He got changed very slightly, and it was only recently. So, yeah, they absolutely could have caught stuff like that. But as for all the reasons I just talked about, it doesn't really work. But there's always a chance. Riot just had a 5% catch chance, and CJ got lucky. Oh, wow, okay. I'm starting to realize why I was going on these tangents. It's because they're just lower in the script. TrevorTube wants to know, are stone location evolutions the same as they are in-game? For example, if Star touched a water stone by accident, would she just evolve? Or would D get to have a say in whether or not that happens? Same thing with someone like Monty. No, not at all. I don't hold the players accountable for finding a specific place, and I'm not a huge fan of the like quick handout power boost of a stone evolution unless that's something the player wants to do with an item they already have. Someone like Star is unlikely to just evolve on accident. We have, I don't know, we've had a lot of discussions on what route, like Phoebe wants to go with Boysenberry, the route we might take with Star. At the end of the day, we really, really like how Star's working. Star is working exactly as intended. I know a lot of you guys interpret every time she gets these characteristics that, oh, she's going to evolve into this thing. No. We are trying to get across that she is so genetically unstable that when she's around elements, she takes on the aspect of that evolution branch. That's all that is. It's just flavor. It's for fun. She's not necessarily about to evolve at any given moment. And we might even go the route where she never does and just simply maintains this ability to kind of bounce between them all. Because that's a big decision to make. Moving on! Would you or have you considered making new evolutions for Pokemon like Klaus, like a more modern Overquill design? I know Titania is a new pre-evolution to Skarmory, so that's why I'm wondering. Yes, but not in the sense that you're probably thinking. So I'll cover this here because it comes up a lot. I got a lot of questions. Are you going to add X or Y thing from Legends because Hisuian forms have been announced? Like, would Red Puppy, also known as Fang, will he evolve into a Hisuian Arcanine? No. I'm not just gonna genetically modify a Tot Pokemon just cause. The Source Stones are in the game if that's something they want to pursue, and they take Fang to the Rock Source Stone down the line, and that's something they're looking to do, maybe. But it's not just gonna happen. I don't want to give too much away, but I have asked the players a lot on what they want their team to evolve into. They have a say in it. It's not just me. I don't just make these decisions for them. So stay tuned on that. Last bit from Trevor. For other special Pokemon, do they have different types too? I think this question is in regards to like variants having alternate typings, in which case, yes, usually. If they have a specific mutation that alters their form, prime example being my Sneasel boys, my Sneasel clans everywhere, then not necessarily no, it just modifies their features. I'm a huge proponent of branched evolution, not in the Sneasel to Weavile or Sneasler sense, but in the sense of like Darwin's finches. I love Pokemon that in different environments would adapt differently. So a Sneasel, the Claw Smashers, that have those like hard fists are because there are trees nearby that they need to be able to break down, and those claws weren't sharp enough to cut through a thick tree, so instead they just opted for brute force. So the Sneasels in that area of the world, just through evolution, no longer required a long branching claw. Take something like Chester, who comes from a dramatically altered environment where fire and water types are always seen as a single entity. They have a typing that reflects that different evolutionary path. So the water out there is dangerous to not have a fire typing. So variants that had a fire typing kind of tacked in there did better, reproduced, you get Chesters. But that's going to do it for the first bout of these questions. You guys have a lot of them, so I'm going to try to keep them in bite-sized bits. Try to keep them to at or around 20 minutes or less so that you guys don't have to watch through a whole bunch of stuff. I will put the questions on the screen as we've gone through if I've done my work correctly. And hopefully you guys find these answers suitable. Again, a lot of you have similar questions, so I'll probably touch on them in these as I get to them or as I just remember that I've seen them. But I will try to cover everybody's individually as we move on. But hopefully you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more. Much love, everybody. Adios!